Have you heard about this personal and professional podcast?
Coaching in Session
with your host, MichaelRearden.
I think back at my time when I was a teacher, looking at all the situations, it is so much more brighter today than it was when I was in the classroom living it. Because it's like you move so fast in the classroom and you have to be able to move with the class, because if you're lagging behind any bit, you're going to take control. One of the things I noticed was how the children interacted with one another. If a new student came in, for example, the new student was kind of shy, was a bit standoffish, was unsure of, this new environment. Now, all of the kids were friendly typically. They wanted to eat with the new kid. They wanted to hang out, play with them. Maybe it's the shiny effect taking control, right? Oh, something new. I want to be a part of this. I want this in my life. But the student was always, the new student was always, like, well, let me take everything for a grain of sand, right? Let me go slow and figure out what needs to happen. Sometimes these students were so different, right? I remember there was a girl, I believe she came in at second grade or third grade. And let me tell you, she was maybe the most phenomenal singer. And I was like, whoa, like you're such a good singer. When she came into the class, she was like this independent singer and so powerful. But then down the road a little bit, she started to adapt some of the play of that classroom. And the classroom was, what's the word for them? They were a lively bunch, right? So when it came time to do things, sometimes they did things in the sense of, I have a sugar brain. And a sugar brain is basically, I can control myself. I don't know if you have ever given a kid sugar, but if you give a kid sugar and you try to like tell them to do things, they're like, blah, 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 and they're jumping off the walls and they're not able to really understand what's going on. Okay. This happened with my dog once, and my dog got into the Halloween candy when she was young. And she ate all of this Halloween candy because my mom had left all this Halloween candy around. And then I was like, what is wrong with this dog? And I'm talking about, I had trained this dog to be obedient. And it was like every day for 9 months, me training this dog. So like if I told her to do something, boom, it got done immediately. So when the dog had all of the sugar brain, right, the sugars going on, the stimulus, she was not able to listen to any of the commands I gave her. And if she did do a command, it was like she did it for a moment. So she sat down, she got back up. Like she couldn't like sit there and be in control of her body. Well, that's typically what she kind of fell into. Now, you have to ask yourself this question. Did the kid say, hey, sweetheart, or hey, young girl, or hey, new student, you need to have a sugar brain too. You need to be just like us, and you need to say, hey, if something's going on, I need to have my brain going crazy too. But it's very interesting because I know they didn't say that to her. They didn't even know what it was, right? And I'm not even sure if any teacher knew what it was. What was happening was she was conforming to the masses of the group. She saw what they were doing and she started to mimic exactly what they did. And I was like, that's amazing. Because even when she was doing her singing and working with everyone, she was like, I have to sing just like them. She lowered her bar. I was like, how in the world did this happen? She mimicked the classroom. She conformed naturally. I'm sure no one went up to her and said, hey, you're too good of a singer. You need to sing just like us. You need to sing bad just like us. It was an interesting situation. So that led me to writing this article here, Peer Pressure versus Conformity Attraction. And I talk about all of what's happening with what peer pressure is, with what conformity is. And basically, in a nutshell, peer pressure is basically someone saying, hey, if you want to be a part of this group, you need to wear our clothes, you need to look this certain way, you need to talk this way, right? So the peers around you are pressuring you to change, to adapt, to according to what they want or what they accept as normal or even appropriate. this didn't just happen with that girl, right? Because we can look at the history of that class. In 2 years, everyone was singing at her previous level or even above. Because what I did when I saw this as a teacher, I said, no, we're not. It's like, no, I'm raising the bar for everyone because she's not going to lower her bar because everyone else is already at a low bar. So I had to lift that class up crazy, and they became one of the best groups in the school. So by the time they were in chorus, because they were still, second grade, they don't do chorus until they're in fifth grade. But either way, by the time they were in chorus, the best chorus class ever, right? I would like everyone who heard them sing, they were like, whoa, how in the world are these kids making this beautiful music? And it's because they had no choice but for the burden of achievement, the burden that I was going to give them of changing. Because I wasn't going to allow a student to have to conform to a lower standard because she came from a higher standard. And it was just interesting how she did it so naturally. So, this doesn't just happen in schools. This happens everywhere. Because if I'm going to be conforming to my environment, typically, that is going to be a good thing for me in the short term. But what about the long term? If you come from a place that is full of high achievers, and then you move into a place of low achievers, for example, you are going to have a choice to make. Are you going to help these low achievers that you're around elevate? Or are you going to say, you know what? I can let off the gas a little bit. I can take it easy. And I remember when I was all done with college, and it was so interesting because I was someone who would work a full-time job, a part-time job, and I would do all of these things. I'm talking about my whole week was usurped. And then after the whole aspect of, my career began, I was like, well, I don't have to do as much anymore, right? I already did all the work. But then I said, you know what? I don't like this. I don't like having time to watch movies and to go on hikes and things like that. Like, I want to have to fight for time to go on a hike or to have a little bit of free time where I can watch a movie every 2 or 3 months. And it sounds so absurd. Like, most people, they're like, I want to retire early. I want to have all this free time and the luxury to do what I want. Where me, it's like, I would rather, you know, be like, I got to do this. I have to do this. Like, this is mandatory. That's just my, who I am because I understand it keeps me going, right? I wasn't, and I will not, follow with what everyone else is doing. So if everyone else in my peer group or in my environment is operating at a low level, that's on them, right? I will, and I know how to because I have given myself, I guess you could say, the experience of being in different areas. So I talked about this already in the podcast. You should have at least 3 groups of friends. You can have your low achieving friends, your average friends, and then you have your high achieving friends. And you can figure out where you want to be, right? Because not every day you're going to want to be a high achiever, right? I understand. It's tiring, right? You have to say, well, I have to be a high achiever today. Now, of course, it would be best if you were a high achiever every day, but I understand you're going to have days when you want to rest, right? Days when you're going to want to kick it back and do nothing, right? Okay, cool, right? So maybe one day you want to play video games with your low achieving friends, right? Cool, you have a great time, you recharge, right? Then you're with your friends 9 to 5, maybe go out for drinks or something like that on the weekend, you recharge, right? But now you recharge, right? You got your games in, you got your drinks in, and then now you're ready to achieve higher. So you hang around those high achieving friends for maybe a couple of weeks or months or whatever it be, and you learn and you grow. And then if you go back to the lower achieving friends, school for a little bit, hang out, whatever, right? Kick it. That's what you do. But then you are always fluctuating, right? You're always changing. And it's not so much that you take a step back and you stay back, but you take a step back for a reprieve so you can elevate yourself. So this is something that many people, if they can implement properly, they're going to make good progress. And it might not be like, oh my God, like overnight, I made all this progress, but you do it in a way that feels good to you. It's like almost like you don't even realize that you're changing. It's like you just naturally do it because it feels good. What I will say is when it comes to the peer pressure in each of those groups, it is going to be different. The peer pressure for the lower achieving people, it could be an anchor, right? You are this big shot now, right? You got a college degree and you make all this money, right? Blah, 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 right? Maybe these same people are going to want handouts from you, right? So they say, hey, give me some money, like, lend me some money. I need some money. But it's not so much about you need to take care of those people, because at some point, what I will say with these three groups of friends is you're going to get rid of the people who are not high achievers at some point. You're going to get rid of your lower crowd people, maybe keep a couple of the average people, and then you're going to keep a majority of the higher group people. That's just typically how it's going to end in a decade or 2 decades time span, right? Because the discrepancy in growth is going to happen, and then you're going to understand who's for you and then who's not for you. Because people who are for you, they want to see you win. But yet, for the people who are lower achievers, they want you to be even with them. Even though you can level with them at some points and play games and, drink and do the fun stuff per se, right? The stuff that is not going to necessarily bring growth in your life, but it can be fun for the moment. That right there might be, an understanding for them, like, oh, they're conforming to me right now. But the idea is you didn't necessarily conform to them long term. It was just for that moment. The peer pressure is going to kick in when you start to separate yourself from them, saying, hey, like, what's happening? Like, you're supposed to be my friend. You're supposed to be hanging out with me. You're supposed to support me, right? You're supposed to have my back. I mean, you can hear all of these terminologies to what is happening, right? And this doesn't just happen in schools. This happens when you're an adult too. Because now, let's say you work in a workplace now, right? Everyone's working and everyone has their own cubicles and things like that. And everyone is average, right? You might have some all-stars here and there, of course. And everyone aspires to be these all-stars, but then you're going to have cliques forming. Oh, cliques at work, right? You're the same work entity working for the goal of the company to make the money typically. It's the same thing, right? The nerds hang out with the nerds in school, the popular kids, the jocks, the cheerleaders, the band geeks. And I mean, guess what? Everyone naturally conforms to where they feel comfortable. So, where do you feel comfortable today is the $1,000,000 question, right? Write that down. Where do you feel comfortable today? Do you feel comfortable on stage in front of 1,000,000 people? No, typically not, right? So where do you feel comfortable? Do you feel comfortable in front of your, let's say all of your colleagues at work giving a presentation? Maybe, maybe not, right? That's not even close to being on stage in front of 1,000,000 people. So let's go even further. Do you feel comfortable just being someone that's watching the crowd and you don't have to go up and speak? Okay, great, right? This is all using the example of public speaking as an example. Let's say, do you feel comfortable living in an apartment? Okay. Do you feel comfortable living in a house? Okay. Do you feel comfortable living in a mansion? Right. And a house is different than a mansion because a house typically 3.2 mortgage will be around $2,500. Living in a mansion, you're going to have way more bedrooms depending, and your monthly mortgage might be like $12,000, right? Which is more comfortable, which is more plausible to you, which is something that you would feel comfortable making, right? And that you can make, right? You don't want to just elevate your lifestyle because everyone else around you is elevating your lifestyle. You can live in that same beat up house and have the same beat up car and hang around those high achieving people. And they might say something, right? So they say, hey, you have to conform. You have to get this car and you have to drive like us and you got to dress like us. And to be honest, you could still have the same mindset as them of being high achievers. But you understand that in life, you don't need all these lavish things. There's different levels to peer pressure and to conformity. Peer pressure is going to say that people want you to do these things that is going to make it right, right? We want you to be like us. We want you to do things like us. And if you do these things like us, you might be successful like us. You might be happy like us. You might be in the group like us, meaning that if you're not like us, we're going to outcast you. So the burden is, if you don't conform or if you don't change, then we are going to separate from you. That is the aspect of peer pressure, where the people around you are saying you need to change or you're not going to be in this group. If you know anything about the human mind and the human, structure of culture and history, is that we are people that are dependent on community. So that means we want to have some level of community. We want to have some level of camaraderie in the people and around us. So that means we will conform, even though we don't want to. We will say, hey, I'm going to fall into this peer pressure because if not, I'm going to be outcasted. But yet, even in the world we're living today, where no one says, hey, you need to do this, or they might not even apply that you need to do this. I know Hollywood does a lot of application to peer pressure. They say, you know what? It'll be really nice if you did this for me, right? It'll be really nice if you did this for me, because if you don't do this for me, I'm not going to call you again, or you're not going to be in any more movies or something like that, right? Because Hollywood is very different than, a play in, like on Broad Street or whatever the street is in New York, right? Broadway is very different. You are going to do what I bid, because if not, I might not give you a call later. So they are very nice about it, right? Peer pressure is, that small hint of, yeah, it'll be nice if you did this, right? You should do this, or, like there's always an or. You don't want that. But typically, if you leave a person long enough to their devices, they will naturally conform to what's around them. You take a transplant from Europe and you bring them over to America, they're going to naturally become American. Now, it's not saying that they're going to forget their roots and start doing everything opposite and different, but they will dress a certain way. How many people, for example, we can use certain places in Africa where they have African garbs. Typically, even though they come from these African garbs and they might wear these African garbs for events, they might wear these African garbs for certain holidays over in Africa that they still celebrate, but they're not going to wear it maybe going grocery shopping, or they might not wear it going to the store, going to clothes shopping or something, or they might not wear it going to work. They wear what is appropriate around them. They conform naturally. Now, I'm not saying everyone conforms, right? Because it's not true, but a good amount will. In this article, Peer Pressure versus Conformity Attraction, I talk all about it. I talk about how students conform. I talk about how you can conform as an adult. And the concept is so intriguing because it doesn't matter if you're a child or an adult. You're naturally going to be swayed in a certain way. And it's important that you understand the difference between peer pressure and conforming. Because when you are doing things to conform, or you're doing things because people are peer pressuring you to do them, you can decide and make a choice. And if you have a strong mindset, peer pressure is not going to have a strong effect as it would to, let's say, a teenager trying to fit in with their friends. It's going to almost be null, meaning it's not going to be something that's going to be even potent enough for change to happen in your life. Typically, when you're an adult, the things that you conform to, or the things that you change to, are things that you have given yourself the thought process of, I'm going to change, versus I'm changing because. But then again, even that, sometimes you're going to do things almost unconsciously because the subconscious is so powerful, where you see these things and you say, it would be good if I had that, or if I did this. For example, cars. People drive a certain type of car. You drive a BMW, drive a Mercedes Benz. It is this idea of wealth, right? I can't tell you how many people from, like overseas, when they come over here, even though this cars they have over there might be BMWs, Audis, etc., they're like, I'm driving this car over here because maybe I'm used to it, but then maybe because it is a status symbol here in the States. So I want to have the status symbol. I know there's many Indians who drive like BMWs and things like that, right? Because they say, I like the car. But there is, again, the conformity aspect. Do you really like the car, or do you like what the status symbol the car gives you? And it's something that you have to figure out for yourself. I can't tell you what you like, because you might like the car and like how it drives, etc. But then you can also like, oh, what kind of car you drive? Oh, I drive a BMW. Oh, you drive a BMW. Wow, fancy, right? Sure, right? You might like that. But then you might say, I don't need that. So depending on who you are, where you are, you're going to have different levels of wanting to change into a comfortable suit, right? The suit that you show the world, the suit of who you are. Sometimes it's going to be a good thing, but sometimes it's going to be detrimental to who you can become. So there's so many aspects to peer pressure and to conformity. Now, for children, it's going to be very different than what it is for adults. But if you are a person who finds yourself struggling with the idea of wanting to be a people pleaser or fall into line with some of the latest trends, it's a new trend, I have to do it. You have almost lost control, and you need to regain that control so you can elevate yourself above everyone else around you. It's not only about being like everyone, it's about being true to who you can become. For that, you have to be able to say, you know what? If I need to change, I need to elevate. I need to give myself the tools and the resources for that change. And for that, I encourage you to reach out to us here at RevenConcepts. The change is going to be simple. It's going to be something so intuitive where it's natural to you, because that is what you're capable of. You have the potential within you right now to be a higher level than whatever you are. Most people don't even realize they're operating at a lower frequency, that they're operating at a lower level of being, because they don't have that person trying to get that potential out of them. And when you want that potential out, it's going to come out. And when you have a coach that wants it to come out as much as you want it to come out, it's coming out. And when it comes out, you're going to say, whoa, I'm amazed at how different I am today. And it's not so much that you are ashamed at the person you were. It's almost like you didn't know you had this within you. It's like you have done something and it's so profound, and you're like, whoa, if I just stayed like everyone else, I wouldn't know what would be the abundance of what could be. And that was you.